All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Lincoln Pre-Council meeting for March 21st, 2022. It's been a long day, been a long week. We have our friends from the Community Health Endowment here today to speak with us a little bit, so I'll go ahead and turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. My name is Kim Moore, and I am the current chair of the Community Health Endowment Board of Trustees. And I'm here with our executive team presenting today, and I think I'll let them introduce themselves right as they speak, if that's okay. So we're real excited to be here today.
And I'll run that, Kim.
Oh, okay.
I think we have to bring it up on the screen for you.
It's coming.
There we go.
Here we are. So our current Board of Trustees, you can see all the names here. Our executive team is behind me. And as you can see, it's a wide variety of healthcare and community people that are involved in the Board of Trustees. And then, of course, we're supported by our wonderful staff, including our President and CEO, Lori Seibel. Want to talk a little bit about community impact. Since 1999, CHE has awarded approximately $36 million in grants to nonprofit and public agencies to fulfill our goal of creating a healthier Lincoln. We started with around $38 million of our original balance, and with inflation adjusted and then the 35.8, the nearly $36 million, we're currently expecting to have a balance of about $112 million, and that's as of December 31st. Now, all of you know things have changed a little bit since the end of the year,
Right.
and we'll talk more about that.
Goodness gracious, that's a big chunk.
Isn't that,
It's impressive.
it's impressive,
That includes our grants, so.
and
that's
includes
not
what we've
in the
given
balance.
out.
Sure.
Oh my gosh.
So highlights from the last fiscal year, fiscal 2021, we awarded 36 new grants, 24 were multi-year grants for a total of 60 projects that we funded for about $2.5 million of funds that we awarded to the grantees. Now, since 1999, which is important to note, we've had 140 different agencies that we've funded, and we funded 431 total projects. One of the things as a retired hospital executive that is especially rewarding to me is the work that Community Health Endowment did to help coordinate Hospital Heroes Week. I don't know if any of you had a chance to either see what was happening or participate at all, but with the help of some community sponsors, we actually had several different activities that we helped award. One of them that was especially meaningful is we gave out over 5,000 thank you cards to our hospital heroes. And these were written by people throughout the community. When I went and got my hair done, I was giving out cards and people were just delighted to recognize these hospital heroes. As you know, with the things that have gone on with the pandemic over the last couple of years, we were so excited just to give them a big pat on the back. So we gave those cards. The mayor actually issued a proclamation the week before Thanksgiving, issuing that week as Hospital Hero Appreciation Week. And one of the highlights was the shift change celebrations. So we did a variety of things at our hospitals throughout Lincoln. And I had the opportunity to actually participate in this last one. And it was as much fun for the people that were receiving the awards as those of us that had a chance to clap people on the back. So a pretty special event that we had the opportunity. CHE Resiliency Fund. Marilyn, is this your slide?
This is mine.
Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm Marilyn Moore. I'm Vice Chair of the Community Health Endowment Board, and we really appreciate having a chance to give this report today. The last time I was in this room was when you were considering my nomination to the board, and I want to thank you for approving that nomination. I have learned a lot, and it has been a wonderful opportunity. So let's pick up from where Kim left off. 2 years ago, right as of today, 2 years ago, we were realizing that this pandemic was going to have an effect on our lives as individuals and on our collective connected lives in communities and across society in a way that we couldn't predict, but we knew it would be quite different. And foundations across the country were starting to rethink what does it mean to be a foundation and what does it mean to use the resources that you have to make a difference in the lives of individuals and in the lives of the networks and the structures that hold communities together. And the Community Health Endowment was no different from every other foundation in that regard. We redirected the funding that we have to make available to programs and to nonprofits and to projects in this community under the label, the umbrella of a resiliency fund, and with two major areas of emphasis. One is in the area of health equity, because we know that just as in nearly every other societal factor that we might look at, there is a disparate, inequitable outcome for persons of color, persons of low income, persons who are not native English speakers in this community and in other communities, and that's true in the area of health as with so many other things. So we wanted to direct our dollars to build and strengthen community resiliency by addressing health disparities.
So,
Come on up, Dr. Moore. We might have to stop you for just a moment.
We were just saying, you should move towards one of the microphones.
Where is
left or right?
oh, left or right?
Right here.
Yep.
Oh, okay.
Maybe you're right over there, whichever one you want.
A little uncertain stepping away from the screen there. So we took a part of our resiliency fund and said we're going to directly address and fund those projects that are committed to addressing areas of health inequity. The other thing that became a quick reality was that people were going to be isolated in ways that they've never been before, and for all kinds of reasons. People working at home, children not being in school, persons in hospitals and in nursing homes who were unable to have visitors, just that human interaction that is a necessary part of our lives was being curtailed dramatically and suddenly. And so the second area of emphasis within the Resiliency Fund was to address the needs of human connection. We're going to share with you today 3 projects out of many that were funded to address these areas. So one had to do with our legacy project at the Schroeder Park Wellness Center. I think we have great photos. There we go. Perhaps when you think of Schroeder Park, you will think of that neighborhood that's at West A and West 6th Street. Perhaps you will think of the area that is the longtime home of the Willard Community Center. Perhaps you will think of it as the neighborhood that now hosts the new Morning Hope Center, in which Lutheran Family Services also has an office. And perhaps you will think of it as the neighborhood that is a little tiny pocket park right in that square block. And Community Health Endowment has had a part of funding each of those developments. So there's a new Morning Hope facility at one of our legacy projects, which brings services to the neighborhood and especially provides a service, the space for Lutheran Family Services to bring their services to that neighborhood. The park itself has been reinvigorated, providing lots of ways for people to have healthy activities for families to gather, for the community to gather. There is a community crops garden that's located on the site next to the Willard Community Center, and Community Health Endowment has funded part of that, including a staff person. And there is also some funding from Community Health Endowment within the Willard Community Center itself. And all of that has been intended to help address the health disparities and the inequities that come when there's a lack of services in a low-income neighborhood. I know that people that live in that neighborhood often feel like the rest of the city kind of doesn't know that they exist. It's not on anybody's major traffic way, but they're wonderful families doing their very best, as families are all across the community, to be part of a vibrant neighborhood, and Community Health Endowment has been part of that. Another project that was funded was to address the isolation or the need for human connection, and that was a funding to a foundation that provides Grand Pads, which are a wonderful device.
I've never heard of a Grand Pad.
I know, isn't it great? It's for a grand generation. It's for grandparents, and it's a pretty easy to use iPad that does exactly what it's intended to do, and that is to help grandparents stay connected with their family and with their friends, especially valuable at a time that family and friends couldn't come see them wherever it was that they were living. And those were funded through the Dreamweaver Foundation, and then placed in some in Tabitha, some in other residential settings for generally seniors, low-income seniors who were particularly isolated during this time. And then a third project that was funded was to fund the State of Mentoring report, and timing is lovely. There was a major story about this in yesterday's Journal Star, that the Lincoln Youth Mentoring Coalition released its first of its kind report about the state of mentoring in the city and identified the need for an additional 936 mentors in the community. So a shout out to everybody who serves as a mentor, and I'm urging people to say yes to the opportunity to serve as a mentor for a young person who just needs one more stable adult in that young person's life. And we think that addresses both some equity issues and some connectedness issues. We don't often think of young people as being isolated, but many times they are. And many times the mentor is the stable adult person that provides them a safe place and a strong place to continue to grow. And then finally, we provided some additional funding to the Lincoln Fresh produce truck, which makes its way all across this community. We helped them upgrade that truck by putting coolers within the truck so they can be out longer and not have to go back so often to pick up fresh produce. That increases the number of stops they can make and the amount of food that can be distributed safely around town. It's just grand. And the truck had to stop for a few months at the beginning of the pandemic while the good folks at the food bank tried to figure out what is the safest way to do what was a very much face-to-face delivery of food. And it's now running again, and it's still a face-to-face delivery. It's just done with a few more things in consideration. So we were really glad to be able to provide continued funding. The Lincoln Fresh truck was initially funded by the Community Health Endowment, so this just helps upgrade it to the next level. One of the responsibilities of board members of Community Health Endowment is to visit the sites where we have funded projects, and here's just a collage of photos. You'll see that first one that shows up. We did some of those site visits virtually by Zoom. That's the way we could stay in touch during that time. But we also were at Schroeder Park. We looked at the community crops. We met with the community worker who's there. We did volunteer work on the Lincoln Fresh truck. We did a visit to the bike project and learned that they're making replacement parts from their 3D printer, which I still just don't quite understand, but I think it's wonderful that they figured that out and how to do that. And we had a chance to visit the New Morning Hope Grief Center. So those were all of the ways that, some of the ways, just a handful of ways, that the resiliency funds have been used by the Community Health Endowment in the last year. I'll turn it over to Lori, who has lots more facts and figures.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's always so great to see all of you. I just want to run through a few more things that I think you'll find helpful and important. One of the things that we did is we reached out 3 times to our grantees, and we asked them, how are you doing? We asked them a question. If you could describe how you're feeling about life and work in just 2 words, what would those words be? So we did this over 18 months during the pandemic, and as you can imagine, the first set of words were encouraged, hopeful, we're going to get through this, all those kinds of words. The second one showed a little bit more of a fatigue. And here's the last set, which we just finished in December 21st. And the words exhausted, hard-pressed, busy, overwhelmed are getting bigger. But I will also tell you that in the middle of every one of these word clouds was the word hopeful. And I think that that reflects our nonprofit community. We will have copies of the grantee report in your packet we'll leave with you. And you might just take a moment to look through what the nonprofits are feeling right now and how they believe that they can be helped by the community. We, of course, released our new Place Matters report, of which you'll have the new report in your packet as well. We had 3 new maps this time. One was about aging, and then there were a couple about rental rates. And so we wanted to really have an understanding, a better understanding of what housing looks like in Lincoln. And of course, those maps show that we're becoming a more rental filled home, and where those rentals are actually moving in our community. The aging tells us that certainly that's an issue that we're all going to have to start thinking about as well. And we have made 161 presentations of Place Matters. People continue to ask for that presentation. I think the material is being presented in a way that is understandable and very personal to people, and we're grateful to the Lincoln-Lancaster County Health Department and the Planning Department for their role in that project. So I just want to show you a couple of maps. One really tells us about first trimester prenatal care. And if you look at that one red spot there right to the south of downtown, this is an example of how these maps can really gather people around a particular neighborhood. and go to work. We know that first trimester care is the indicator of how healthy a child is going to be. And so if we can make inroads into that red and that orange area, we can make a difference for the lives of future Lincolnites. So we want to be able to do that. And so one of our priorities, and Kim will mention them later, is to address prenatal care in these census tracts. We also want to continue to focus on healthy food access. This map tells us where we need to continue to work. I think Lincoln Fresh has been embraced by this community, and this certainly doesn't reflect how the work that Lincoln Fresh is doing, but we certainly have to continue to embed healthy food in our neighborhoods. Another one, and that will also be a focus of our upcoming priority areas. And the third area that we're taking directly from our maps is aerobic fitness for kids. This is really something that I think we should all be very, very concerned about. These are areas in red and orange that tells us where kids can't pass the PACER test. They aren't passing the PACER test. And so we need to figure out how to change that and do it in the face of a pandemic that has caused people to become more isolated and less active. So we really have our work cut out for us. But a good example of what we're trying to do is we recently funded Malone Unity Sports. Malone is basically putting a fitness director, a sports director at Malone Center, and let's get those kids involved. Because I will tell you that the data on youth sports participation in Lincoln, of which we're right now doing a study on, and we'll happy to share those results with you, but it is an indicator of health equity if you're able to participate in youth sports in our community at a high level. And some kids just simply can't do that because of the cost of that. So what we're able to do with this particular position is get those kids in those sports, perhaps get them active in their school sports. Perhaps that will lead to a higher level of education, scholarships, all of those kinds of things. But what it will do, and I believe this desperately, is that it will provide kids with connections and networking in the community that they never would have had before. I know my kids' experience in youth sports provided them with a broad range of networks across the community that ultimately led to opportunities for them. And I would like that to happen for every one of these kids as well. We know that the higher the PACER score, the better your grades in school. And we have to figure out how to get kids active and moving in our community. We, of course, know poverty continues to remain an issue, as well as overlapping very strongly with our minority community. And these areas in purple tell us where both of those things are above average. Why is this important? Well, for lots of reasons, but particularly because we know that our community is becoming diverse. And so if being a minority in Lincoln is connected to being in poverty, our future is strikingly of concern, because the higher our minority population gets, if we don't disconnect living in poverty from being a person of color, then we have a lot of work to do down the road. And so I would encourage you to think about how to make those impacts, and that's what we're really trying to do in our health equity area. This is interesting. We looked at a map a little bit differently this time, and we took areas where people were existing, the 30 to 60% of people were living in poverty. Those are in pink. And then we looked at those where 1 to 5% of people were living in poverty. And we looked at the life expectancy differences in those areas. You'll see up in the core, it's 72. In the blue areas, it's 82. So there is a 10-year difference between those who are living in the poorest census tracts versus those who are not. And that should move any of us to action to try to equalize that. Older adults, this just tells us that our population is getting older, and we need to be prepared for that. It changes the way our transportation systems work. It changes the way our neighborhoods are designed. It changes our workforce, who's going to take care of all of us when we move to these facilities. And so what we do know is that the population of children under the age of 5 will increase 19% by 2050. Those over 65 will increase 53% during the same time. So this is something that, while I love to focus on kids, we can't forget that there is going to be a large population of older adults living in our community. These are the two rental maps, and I won't go into them, but I'd be happy to share what they're telling us anytime with you. The last thing I want to talk to you about is our Cultural Centers of Lincoln Collaborative. Our Board of Trustees has identified this as a legacy project as well. We have not allocated any funding to it, but we are talking with them about how to do that. We have convened them, we have met with them. I mean, the number of meetings has been just incredible. The ability for these folks to see their future in a new way has been it makes me so proud to be associated with this project. And so we designated this as a legacy project in April of 2021. And I wanted to share with you just a 2-minute video of them telling the story themselves. I need to do that. Or if they do that in the back. I don't know. Or do I push it? Well, maybe we'll come back to it. I bet Melissa is frantically trying to figure that out in the back room, would be my guess. But what we know is that eventually this is going to look, it's going to be something, we hope, called Unity Commons, of which there will be the Asian Community and Cultural Center, there will be El Centro, there will be a refugee welcome center, there will be an early childhood development center, which would be such a gift to this core of the city, a family education center, a senior center, not just a food distribution site, but a healthy food distribution site, a convening and celebration space, some shared classrooms, and then leasable office space as well. That does not include the fact that we're looking for Malone Center to be rebuilt right there across the street from this campus, as well as the Good Neighbor Center just down the street, continuing to do their good work only in a better facility. So we believe all the data tells us this is what we need to do, and this is where we need to do it. And I would be happy to, if I can't answer questions about it, direct you to the people who can. And so I will leave it with Janice.
Hi, I'm Janice Walker. I have been on the Board of Trustees since, I think, 2017. And during the time that I've been on the board, in 2019, we decided to take a look internally and kind of reflect on the first 20 years of the Health Endowment and the things that had gone well, the things that didn't get done, the things that had disappointed us or surprised us, specific turning points in the Health Endowment. This was a 9-month process that involved establishment of a leadership team of current and former trustees. Tom, you were an active part of that team. Thank you. As well as engaging a trusted partner to work with Lori in holding a series of conversations with community leaders, policymakers, and nonprofit leadership in the community. And in all, they held 42 of these conversations to just get a sense of, are we doing everything that we need to be doing? What should we do differently? During the community conversations, the most frequently mentioned turning point for the endowment was when we came up with the Place Matters project, which you have just seen some examples of. This has made health data available in a way that people can really use and understand it in the community. And it's used not only by us as a guiding document for our grant proposals, but it's utilized by many other agencies in the city. The persons interviewed during that process also mentioned that the Health Endowment had been a champion of integrating behavioral health and primary care, and most specifically, we invested heavily in the Health 360 clinic at 2300 O Street. And the endowment was encouraged by everyone interviewed to continue its work of closing the gap on health disparities and promoting health equity throughout the community. This will continue to be a big focus for us. Lori, having been president and CEO of the organization since its inception, had her own reflections and thoughts. And one thing that she mentioned was that although it hasn't always been easy, the endowment has operated in the spirit of improving the community without being seriously hampered by public conflict or debate. It's her belief and the belief of the Board of Trustees that the endowment belongs to the entire community, regardless of individual beliefs and values. The reflection process ended, of course, with a final report, as all such projects do. Each recommendation on that report's been reviewed by the Board of Trustees, and action has been taken. So I believe that a process like this would be valuable for any organization to go through, but the commitment of the Board of Trustees and staff to review, consider, and implement the findings means that this is not going to be a report that gathers dust on a shelf. It is being used all the time to guide our work going forward in the community. The reflection process confirmed to us that the Community Health Endowment is an important asset in the city of Lincoln. As one of the elected officials who was interviewed said, doubling the size of the endowment while investing more than $30 million in the community is a very big deal. And I would have to agree with that. John, you want to talk about those investments?
Sure. I just have 2 slides for you today.
I have misplaced.
Right there.
There we go. Sure. So, as mentioned earlier, the fund is quite healthy. We've got about $75 million in investments in the fund as of the end of the year. It's in a mixture of equities, fixed income, real assets, and cash reserves. This chart here shows the different performance by year of 2 benchmarks and then the endowments fund. So the lighter blue color is the S&P 500, and you can see the volatility there year over year. And the gold color is fixed income. And as expected with our balanced asset allocation, the darker blue is the performance by year of the endowment and performing and meeting its objectives. The next slide here. Last year, starting in 2020 and going into 2021, on the investment side, the major project was looking for if we needed to replace our investment advisor. And we went through a detailed process, which is outlined here, of us creating an RFP and sending it out. 12 different managers responded. These were national managers and local, Nebraska-based. We interviewed the finalists, brought it down to 4 that came in and talked to us, and we ended up with we think was an excellent selection, a little bit lower fee, and really focused on our needs. This is DeMaio Schneider, and now Fiducient. They've renamed themselves. Went through the process of mapping it over and moving the assets. The custodian is now U.S. Bank, and as of this year, 2021, it was completed. We've recently developed, with their assistance, a new asset allocation, and it seems to be running as expected.
Well, you've had the opportunity to hear all of the great things that have happened for the last couple of years. We'd like to talk to you about what's going to happen over the next 2 years. So our funding priorities have actually been driven much by the map that Lori's already gone through with you. Prenatal care, healthy food access, and youth fitness are all things that came directly out of the data that we have learned. As Lori talked about, our prenatal care is falling way below our goal of 90%. Healthy food access continues to drive obesity rates, and that, as we know, has fit into the youth fitness, which currently 27% of Lincoln census tracts meet the LPS goal for aerobic fitness. So we have a lot of work to do, and we've talked about that. And then finally, mental health, not only because of the isolation that we've experienced through our pandemic, but also this has been identified by our community as a key priority that we really need to be focusing on. So these are our funding priorities over the next 2 years, and we look forward to sharing more information about that in years to come. So that concludes our presentation, and at this time, we'd like to open it up for any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions from the council? Councilwoman Raybold?
I thank you for the presentation. I am so intrigued. You were doing that teaser about rental properties and mapping that. I'm really interested in that, Lori. And then if we wanted to learn more about that, would we ask to set up a time for a presentation on that alone?
I'd be happy to do that. I also would encourage, some folks from the planning department to join me. They were the ones that helped with the map. But it is interesting to see how rentals have moved, how they've changed, where they are currently now happening more than they did in the past. And I think it would provide a nice overview, but it's probably more than just my 5 minutes here could help do. So I'd be happy to do that. You'll see them in the report. And if you'd like more, just call me, Jane.
Okay, because I know that's a big issue. We just had a roundtable on affordable housing with the neighborhood associations at the end of February, and listening to their concerns and making sure that we preserve and maintain our affordable rental housing stock is critical.
Well, of course, we see it as, obviously having an asset addresses poverty, and poverty underlies so much of what we address as an endowment. And so having an asset, having a home, not only creates permanency, but it also often lifts people out of poverty. And so that's why we chose to focus on it in this set of maps.
Terrific.
Councilwoman Raybold, or Councilwoman Ward, sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Mr. Bowers. Thank you, Lori and board members for being here today. I always get excited about everything that you're doing. I have one quick question, but before I ask it, I wanted to just tell you how excited I am about the cultural centers. I think, Lori, you and I sat down in 2019, and you were brainstorming about what that might look like, and here we are. So thank you all for your leadership on that's such an important initiative for our city. So I look forward to that. But I have a very simple question. So I love the Lincoln Fresh trucks, and I think I first got on one out at the Carol Yoakum Resource Center, again, probably in 2019 or before the pandemic. How many do you have in the community? And
there's just one.
Just the one, okay.
And we've, it's one of the reasons why the board voted to update the one, because oftentimes they would fill the truck and then it gets hot,
Yep.
And they'd
Yeah.
have to go back so the produce didn't, wilt or get bad.
Right,
And
yeah.
so starting by putting coolers in it will allow it to stay out longer and make more stops. But we have had conversations with them about additional trucks. So it's something, when we consider the impact, the amount of food that's been distributed, 100 tons of fresh produce right into the neighborhood. And if none of you have ever volunteered on it, I would encourage you to do it. It really is just a sense of the best kind of humanity, I think.
I agree. It's so phenomenal when I haven't volunteered, but I have been inside one. I guess then last I just would say too, to encourage people that haven't to get out to the Willard Community Center, to Morning Hope, and the garden, the community garden. It's the trifecta right in that spot. I'm a little partial to that area. But
the board did also vote, and I'm speaking for them, but the board also did vote to put a person out there, a community engagement person that will do nothing more than to develop products and services and programs for that neighborhood. So I'm hoping we're going to see some
Nice.
music and
Yes,
some
thank
other
you.
things out there.
wow,
Yeah.
thank you for that. That's great. Thank you for being here.
If you wouldn't mind,
Yeah,
could I
let's
have
watch the
2 more
video.
minutes? It's just a very short video. I really think you'll like it. And
I wore a bright color.
My name is Suzanne Mueller with the Ponca Tribe of Nebraska.
My name is John Goodwin, and I am the Executive Director of the Malone Center in Lincoln.
My name is Sheila Dorsey-Vinton, and I'm the Executive Director and CEO of the Asian Community and Cultural Center here in Lincoln.
My name is Romeo Guerra, and I'm the Executive Director at El Centro de las Americas here in Lincoln. My name is Tom Randa. I'm the Executive Director at the Good Neighbor Community Center here in Lincoln.
I want to start by saying that being involved with the Cultural Centers of Lincoln Collaborative
has been the privilege of my lifetime.
We represent 5 unique cultural centers who share similar goals of providing programming and service to our community.
The centers are an important refuge for children, teenagers, and even adults.
We exist to provide shelter,
resources,
human connection.
And our goal is to help everyone who comes here achieve success.
Whether that means at school, raising a family, pursuing a career.
This is a place designed to learn, create, dream,
connect with others,
grow.
You are invited to come here and know that we are rooting for you to make it.
Obviously, one challenge we face is being spread thin.
Staff shortages.
The reality is, we don't always have the ideal combination of resources to meet people where they are.
Sometimes trying to keep it all going feels like that legend of the boy who tried to stop the ocean by putting his hands over the holes in a dam.
It's hard. The Cultural Centers of Lincoln Collaborative
began as 5 organizations working together to serve our community more effectively.
We are constantly looking for the answers that will serve the most people.
The truth is we could all compete for funding to improve our individual facilities,
and that would contradict everything we believe in.
Because the truth is, the audiences we serve are not identical.
But they deserve the same level of commitment.
A shared campus will empower us to slash efficiencies and give us the space we need to grow.
We have chosen to leverage the fact that we share our most core values.
To combat challenges we also share.
The vision we have created is ambitious. It is bold.
And it's rooted in the importance shared epiphany.
None of us can make it
unless we all make it.
That is collaboration.
That is service.
And we're not going to stop until everybody makes it.
And I would just say that this is a group that started talking about how they were going to get new tires for their vans and get new file cabinets for their office. And now they have a dream of being rooted deeply into the community, working together to be able to serve the most vulnerable. And I'm so proud of them and the work that they've done. And I hope you'll be hearing more about it soon. Do you have any other questions for us?
No.
Nope, I don't think we have any
Thank you for
questions.
everything, and never hesitate to reach out to us.
Thank you so much for coming down
Thank you.
and sharing this information with
Thank you.
us.
Good to see you all.
Thank you so much. We're going to move into our directors meeting, but we're just going to go ahead and do it here since we're all here anyways. We'll have the crew come in from, what's that?